always say the what ifs are what really get to the people at the end. The what ifs. Because
Right.
I spent 2 years literally on well, what if I wasn't in Germany when it happened? What if I had talked to him a little longer the last time I talked to him? All those what ifs will mentally destroy you. And
Right.
what people don't know too is the statistics are at least one family member will follow suit after a veteran commits suicide. And when you
Correct.
think about that, that's staggering because people don't talk about that suicide, but it's in the families that I've talked to. And to be honest, between my father, the whole incident was May 23rd, 2017. Between 2018 and 19, that was me. I was going to be that statistic. There were literally moments that I thought, I can't do this.
Welcome in, Josh. We want to thank you for joining us today. We are, for those who don't understand what this video series is about, we call it Deterrence Through Truth. It's one of Heroes in the Sky's new programs that we're trying to implement to do a few things here, and that's really geared towards the families and families as yours that have lost loved ones to this epidemic. And so if you're watching, the primary purpose behind this program is number one is we want to give families like Josh and our widows and our parents and our children that have lost people to this epidemic a voice and identity and a purpose. And that way, and our intent for that is to kind of combat the staggering suicide rates within the family populations once they've lost somebody to this epidemic, because those rates are really high and people don't really talk about those rates. And the second thing we're doing is for deterrence. We're hoping that if somebody hears your story and understands what you go through after losing somebody to this, then maybe they might think twice about completing the act with what their family has going to have to deal with. So, saying that, welcome in, Josh. Can you start by telling us who you are and the warrior that you are honoring today?
My name is Josh Gagnier, and I'm here today to pretty much discuss my father, who was a Marine, served between 1960 and 1965, Cuban crisis, Cold War, Bay of Pigs, Panama riots. He was very active in the Marines and ultimately paid the ultimate sacrifice for his acts.
Okay. And so, what are some of the favorite memories that you share with your father? And growing up as a kid, what was your life like? And what was the home life like?
Wow. Home life was pretty interesting because my dad being a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine. You don't ever change that, never take that out of them. But we grew up as like we were in boot camp. I mean, my first 18 years of my life was boot camp. We would be woken up in the morning with the feet on the floor, yell from him when he walked through the door, and we'd have to jump up and put our feet on the floor, and or he'd drag us out by our toes. I mean, that's how we were brought up, and one of the best memories I think was the training. I mean, there's no other way to put it. My father trained me and my brother to be like Marines. I remember when we were 13, he'd teach us how to fight. We'd learn how to do hand-to-hand combat and knife moves, and then it was firearms training, and so that's what we learned from my dad. He wanted us to be like a Marine, and there's no other way to put it. So our memories we had good memories, but we also had the confusing memories. I thought every kid grew up with a father that trained him. So
Okay.
even in school, it was like, your dad didn't teach you how to do that, 'cause they weren't Marines. So it was pretty unique. And we did have good memories. And I think, looking back now that I know what I know about even post-traumatic stress, I see a lot more signs now than I saw growing up. Because I always thought, my dad had anger issues or my dad had this and that. And now I see what it really was going on, but we enjoyed things like me and my dad, when I got older, we'd go to car shows, 50s car shows. And I would dress him up like he was a young guy, which ironically, he's the age I am now, so but it was fun. Those were some really good memories that I got to share with him. So
And it's definitely a unique upbringing where the families that didn't have the military life would really understand. Some of the key components that you live through every day, people would look at that and not really know what that's like. So you
right.
mentioned you mentioned all these special training and all that. What was the one, if you could pick a few things that stood out as what one of the most special um, acts or lessons that your father taught you as you were growing up?
Yeah, there's really there's a lot of them, and I'm gonna preface by saying it could get emotional here, so because I don't talk about my dad a whole lot. Um, anyway, all right, focus. I gotta focus.
Well, and
The
it's okay. Oh,
I appreciate appreciate it. I try to gain control on it because I don't. There's a lot of emotion tied in with everything, but one of the things my dad taught me that I still to this day have lived it. He said when I was younger, he said, your reputation should be bigger than your wallet. And I never forgot that. So even, my career, I've got about 30 plus years of business management. I've run companies. I've owned multi-million dollar companies. Um, and my focus has always been my reputation has got to be first. It doesn't matter how much money I have in my bank account. If people don't know the integrity that I have, I'm worthless. So that was kind of one of those things that he really imparted on me outside of when you go into the room, make sure you sit towards the back, face the door, scan the room, see who needs to be taken out first, look for any variable threats, those type of things. I mean, that was constantly inbred in me. But the life lessons were, making sure that your reputation is bigger than your wallet. People are going to know you by your character, not by your possessions, not by what you've done. Even, doing Mission Phoenix, I don't want to be the guy in the front. I don't want people to know who I am. I want to leave a legacy for what it's doing, not who I am myself, because it's not a possession to me. This is something that will be turned over to veterans, will be run by veterans, and I'll go in the background. That's my dream because I don't want to have, I want to make sure that in everything I do, that integrity is there. And I think that's probably the biggest life lesson that he taught me.
and we'll touch more on what Mission Phoenix is and the goals behind that your organization here a little bit later. Um, yeah, and so is there something about? I mean, we want to just put your dad on where you could see him on the screen. Is there something about your dad that always made you smile? Like it just you know brightened your day, or because I know he was he sounds he was like he was that tough, authoritative figure that wanted y'all to have discipline and learn the lessons. But was there a soft side where you just remember and you smile about him?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with my dad, my dad struggled, and my dad never told us anything about the military. So that was kind of one of the things I really wish I would have kind of forced out of him, because he never spoke about his tours, he never spoke about anything that he did, but he loved the Lord. So he ended up as long as I was alive, he was a pastor. He found Christ in 1970, I think. Um, and it changed his whole life around. That was his mission, is he could put his life into somebody else. He could serve others. And I watched that, and I just my memories of my dad were not outside of the training. They were never, let's go outside and throw the ball around. My dad never played games with us. He never took us to the basketball court. He sat in his chair and he read his Bible, and he put sermons together. And he and I always joke that we would never get lectures. We would get sermons. My dad wouldn't tell us, hey, you're doing that wrong. He would say, listen, and then he'd sit us down and he would address our sin issues. So that's what I remember my dad. It was, he just, till his dying day, he absolutely he loved people. He loved the Lord. and he had that internal struggle at the same time. So I watched that continual battle that was happening. But um, he if you watch any of my TikToks, there's my phone got destroyed and I lost everything till 19 or 2015 or after 2015. So all my dad's memories were gone. But in 2015, he left me a voicemail that I saved. And even in that, he ends it with scripture. So wow, I'm trying not to get emotional. Um, so yeah, those are the memories I have of my dad. They were great memories. They were really good. And I can say that, my dad, although he had these struggles, he lived a life with integrity. He lived a life that he loved people the best he knew how. His upbringing was horrific. He never used it as an excuse, but I know even going into the Marines, the whole story about him going to the Marines was he was either going to jail because of the things that he was doing, or his dad told him that he had to go into the military, and he tried every branch and nobody would take him because of his record. But the Marines gladly took him in at 17 years old, and he went into the Marines, and that was it. His whole life changed from that point on. He uh, he left after 5 years. He actually got asked to leave nicely, you could say. Um, and he met my mom, and from that point on was a struggle for years till he came to Christ, and then he found peace, and that peace really got him through, I believe, the rest of his life until the point that he just could not take it anymore.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And so we've talked about the your upbringing and the life lessons and the positive impacts that your dad's had in your life. But one part of this series is the deterrence part. And so now we kind of do want to talk about the elephant in the room. And so we know this series is dealing with family members who have lost loved ones to the we call it the 22 a day epidemic, but it's around 44. Um,
Yeah.
your dad's story is a little different. And so how was his story of how he lost your warrior different than a traditional self-inflicted?
Um, a couple key things, because I've analyzed this for years, replayed scenarios, replayed conversations. Uh, my dad, in essence, was not suicidal. Like you would not see him as a man that was planning on taking his life. But the difference with his versus others is, and here's one of the things, and I'll kind of go into a little bit of the background on what I've learned about post-traumatic stress. Um, Studies have been done about those that do take their life or those that get to the point to take their life, but they fail. Those veterans a lot of times get interviewed. They have to go through an analysis. They get to see a counselor. So the data that has been received on that will tell you that most of the time they don't get to the point of pre-planning it. It's an almost instantaneous decision, or it's something that happens spontaneously. Um, in my dad's situation, and I don't know if you want me to go into the whole scenario on it, but it was actually videoed. The actual act was videoed by a neighbor. Um, and you can see in the video that my dad had no intention of what he was doing. Now, there is backstory where I believe that he was tired, he was done, mentally just exhausted. But there was a point in the video where you could see his entire body shift, his entire demeanor shift, his actions all changed. And I believe at that point he decided, if I do this, all the pain is going to be gone. And that I think is a little bit different. Now, my dad's situation is very. It's not recorded a lot, and it's basically it's a suicide by cop incident. And suicide by cop is not listed as a suicide. They're listed as homicides. So even my father's situation was listed as a homicide situation. So it's not counted in the 22 or 44. It's eliminated from that list. But yet the statistics that we've done through our own research is we're losing at least 1,000 a year through a suicide by cop incident. And in this situation, and if you can Google my father's name, I'm sure there's some news reporters that have left the video up because we've asked them to take it down out of respect. Almost all of them have, I think, except for two. But in the video, you can see that my father saw the opportunity where if he just lowered his firearm, all his pain would be gone. But up until that point, the video would show you that he's protecting his home. He doesn't know what's happening. He can't find his wife, so he's panicking. He's telling the neighbor kids to go in their house. It's not safe. Someone took his wife. All these different things are happening, but the reports only show a crazy man outside with a firearm, and that's the end of the story. So we're fighting that whole stigma because
Right.
it that in itself is damaging so many veterans. So it's very different from, we've done a lot of research and I deal with a lot of veterans that have post-traumatic stress. And it's not that I think any veteran in their mind says they wake up in the morning saying, I'm going to end everything today. Now, some do, but for the majority, I don't think that they do. I think that they get to a breaking point, and every day is just a little bit, another chip off of that breaking point where they get to a area and they say, I don't think I can get through to the next day. I don't have any resources. I don't have somebody I can call on. And that's when they make those decisions. And I think those decisions are really rapid decisions. Um, when you understand post-traumatic stress and the euphoric state that a veteran gets in when they're triggered, um, I've dealt with hundreds of veterans, and dozens of them I've been face to face when they're in a euphoric episode, which I call euphoric episode because it's almost like a dream state where they don't realize that they're in that they know where they're at. They can see reality, but they just don't know exactly what's going on. And when they're in that state, when you actually get them out of that state, 9 out of 10 times they'll say, "What just happened?" So they don't understand. They just don't get it. And I think when they're in that state, that's when a lot of them are making these decisions. And that's why I
Mhm.
say I don't think it's a conscious decision to actually do it because military, especially Marines, and I talk about Marines a lot because I grew up with one, so I understand the honor and the integrity of a Marine. A Marine, their objective is to die with honor. Well, what's the most dishonorable way that you can die? So the highest rate of suicide by cop is actually Marines because they may not be able to take their life, but they'll gladly put themselves in a situation where it's taken. And that's where we're trying to do our most damage is fixing that scenario, fixing that agenda, or that not
Right.
agenda, but that whole objective.
Right.
So
Well, and I, as a veteran myself, that I openly share my story. I've survived two attempts, and you're absolutely right when you make that you're calling it a euphoric state. I call it when you no longer fear death.
yeah,
And I think they're both right there close to each other because once you no longer fear death and you make the plan, you really only see the end. You don't see, it's almost like you're detached from your thoughts, and all you can think about is like a tunnel vision that the only way I can end this is if I die. And
correct. Yeah,
it's really powerful when you get pulled out of that because I was the one blessed where I had the weapon in the backpack and my hand was in the backpack pulling it out with my finger on the trigger and somebody stopped me. And so
yeah,
it really bring when you get brought back to reality or that euphoric state or that whatever your brain's going through in that mental anguish, it really is a time of confusion because you really don't know what happened. I didn't know that I'd been stopped until that person stayed next to me and talked to me for a little bit, and you know I like how you talk about it and how you explain it because a lot of people don't understand what the immediate emotions or what that veteran or first responder, in our case, because we honor all of them, may be feeling at the time of
Mhm.
the act.
Yeah.
Because they've never felt it. A lot of people's never felt that.
Yeah.
And we thank you for your research because the research you're doing is helping others understand this epidemic and maybe make a change, a movement so we can get a better grasp on it for others in the future. So thank you for that. And so, um, when when you lose somebody, it's traumatic in itself. But when you lose somebody in this realm, this 22 to 44 a day epidemic, it's a little bit more traumatic than any other way. I that's how I put it.
Yeah.
Just because of the scenario surrounding it, and then so when you have that, you got these mixed emotions of feelings, right? Sad emotion, you got anger, all these things playing through your head as you're trying to process this loss, and even confusion, right? Confusion, guilt. What could have I
Hmm.
done better? What could have how could have I helped
Yeah.
him or them? Who are we talking about? And
I
so,
always say the what ifs are what really get to the people at the end. The what ifs. Because
right,
I spent 2 years literally on the, well, what if I wasn't in Germany when it happened? What if I had talked to him a little longer the last time I talked to him? All those what ifs will mentally destroy you. And
right,
what people don't know too is the statistics are at least one family member will follow suit after a veteran commits suicide. And when you
correct.
think about that, that's staggering because people don't talk about that suicide, but it's in the families that I've talked to. And to be honest, between my father, the whole incident was May 23rd, 2017. Between 2018 and 19, that was me. I was going to be that statistic. There were literally moments that I thought, I can't do this. You know, what veterans I don't think understand, and some do. I don't want to discredit all of them, but when you're in that moment of making a decision, there's the thought of this pain is too much, this weight is too much. This will stop it all. This will just end it all. That pain and that weight never leaves. It literally never leaves. You just compound it over and over on every single person that loves you. That pain never goes away. So if you want to be the warrior, get help for that pain. Don't give it to your family. That's the I've watched my mom go through 3 strokes since the day that it happened. My mom had a stroke. Since then, she's had strokes. The family's not the same. If
Mm,
you saw me then versus now, I'm not the same person. I don't smile the same. I don't laugh. I'm not happy. I have a mission. I'm here to do the mission. And someone asked me not too long ago, what happens when the mission's over? And you finally solve the problem. What happens if that happens? And I don't know. This
right.
is all I know now. My dad literally, I shut down my companies. I shut down everything because my mindset is I have to fix this. I have a weight and a burden that my father literally left on me, which I resent him for that part because I shouldn't be going through this. I should be enjoying life. But instead, I listen day after day of the struggles of so many people that, I mean, frankly, it keeps me up at night, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and you just answered the question. A good bit of the question I was about to ask is those feelings that you personally feel. I know you mentioned resentment because your quality of life is not what it should be at this point in your life. What are there any other feelings that you feel surrounding how your father passed and then the challenges that you're having to deal with and adjust to now? Are there any feelings that you're other than resentment that you feel on a daily basis?
yeah, well, like I said, the what ifs is a big thing. And if I can go kind of into the pre-story or 9 days prior,
Yeah.
which was 9 days before my father's incident, it was Mother's Day in May. It was the last time I spoke to my dad. And it was actually accidental because me and my father, we didn't have the greatest relationship because I'm very dominant, so I would never, if he told me to do something, I would question it, which was totally against the code of being a Marine. You just do what you're ordered to do, and so we butted heads a lot. But towards the end, we got back on track, but we still didn't have the greatest relationship. And when I went to see my mom for Mother's Day, and my mom literally said to me, "Hey, go upstairs and see your dad one last time." Now, and when she said it, I was like, whatever, and she's, you know what I mean. Ironically, it was the last time. But I went upstairs to see my dad. And my dad sat there with papers around his chair, like he used to do with, scripture and sermons, all this research. And the first thing he said was, "Josh, do you know that we're losing 22 veterans every day?" And I said, "No, I had no idea anything about it." No, no, I don't, and he said, "Well, we're losing them, and this is going to stop." And he started going into it. I'm like, "Dad, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. VA will take care of it." My dad said something that I it didn't hear until 9 days later. My dad said, "I called the VA." He said, "All they do is talk you down. They never help you." Now, had I been intuitive enough to listen to my father saying, "I called the suicide hotline, and all they did was talk me down." That's one of those things that will eat at me forever. Because he gave me every sign that day, every sign to tell me that he was struggling. I blew it off. I didn't even sit down. I didn't have enough respect for my dad to sit down and even listen to him. We talked for about 10 more minutes about some things. I told him about going to Germany, and it was it was a great conversation. The best conversation I think I ever had with my dad. When I was walking out of his bedroom, and he stood up, which he never stands up because his back was broken and just all these problems. But he stood up, he gave me a hug, and I left. And when I was walking out of the bedroom, he said, "Josh," and I turned around, he pointed at me, he said, "Someone's gonna fix this." And that was it. Someone's gonna fix it. And it eats at me every single day because I shouldn't be the guy doing this. I'm not qualified, right? I'm not a veteran. I'm not the one that should be fighting so hard for the veteran community. The veteran should be fighting for the veteran community. But my dad, his last order was to fix it, and I fought that for years, and I struggle with the feelings of that. What if I would have just sat there for 10 more minutes and said, why'd you call the VA? Just asking one stupid question could have maybe changed everything. But then I remember, and here's um I came back from Europe. Well, my brother called me. I was in Europe, and he FaceTimed me, or he said, "Can I FaceTime you?" And I had to get somewhere where there was a signal. Got to the hotel. He FaceTimed me, and he was in this just white room, and I thought, it's weird. It just seems sterile. And then I saw my sister come into view, and immediately I knew it was bad because they live so far apart, and if they're together in a place I don't know of, something's wrong. And my brother said, "Dad's gone," and I lost it. But then I just thought, okay, my dad's been struggling. He's been unhealthy. This is probably the best thing. And he said it was a day prior. And I said, "Why did you wait so long?" He said, "I just don't want you to see what's going on." I didn't know it was all over the national news. I didn't know that media was hounding my mom's house and sitting outside. I didn't know all this stuff was going on. And he said, "I don't want to tell you what happened." He said, "You need to, when you get home, we need to talk." And I immediately went onto the internet, Googled my dad's name, and the neighbor had videoed the entire situation. She posted it on Facebook, uncut, and I watched my father being shot and killed in front of his home. And it changed everything. It changed everything. Um, but I say that to say that when I got home, I was angry. I was mad. Why did this happen? I blamed God. I blamed everything I could blame. What happened? And I stood there in front of my dad's mailbox where the blood was stain was on the ground. and I just cried. And my mom came up and she tried to comfort me. And I said, if God works all things together for the good, like Dad's been preaching my whole life, then how is he going to work it for the good for this? It wasn't last Christmas. I went to my mom's house and I stood there. My mom walked up. Sorry. My mom walked up and she said, now you see, now you see how God can work it for the good.
Mm,
I don't need to be in this position, but I can tell you this. I can see lives change now, and
mm,
I can see that all the regrets, all the pain that I've been through, there's a reason for it all. So I have
mm.
to keep going on it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know how we got on that tangent, but
No, it's this is your story. We want people to understand how you feel and what your family's gone through since losing your dad. And so that's, you tell us what you tell the what us what you want us to know, because this is our look into this traumatic event that none of us understand firsthand. Like this is exclusive to what you felt in your family. Because whether if it's self-inflicted or if it's assisted by law enforcement, they're all the scenarios are different, and every family processes these things differently. And
yeah,
I do I do want to say that you made a comment a minute ago about you not being a veteran, but you understand what this is like. You grew up with your father as a Marine. You grew up in that military lifestyle. And so you have an inside track to a lot of these feelings that others don't. And that gave you the passion and the groundwork to start your movement, to be the one to fix it as your dad, his final order to you. And I think that's what and I think that's what makes this movement so big, and how impactful what your organization's doing. It's because you got the final order from your dad, and while there was certain feelings there that you could have done more, you are now carrying on his legacy and making a difference like he asked you to do, you
yeah.
know? And I think um on those tough days, I think that that's probably one positive thing that I don't know that you could probably relate back to say I'm doing what my dad asked me to do,
Yeah,
you know? And that's just from an outsider's
it's
view looking. Yeah,
yeah,
because I it's just an outside view looking in. We don't live these struggles that you do, and so we thank you for sharing those, and we thank you for opening yourself up to these emotions. And that means a lot to us. And just know that the the emotions that you're opening up today and the words you're saying today are going to impact so many other families that are going to watch this, and will make a difference. Um, I think one of the last few questions, I probably got two more, but um, do you ever feel like people don't understand like what you're going through? Like, is it one of those where you just don't try to explain it to them, or is it one of those where it's just a lack of knowledge of, your situation and how you're mourning the loss of your father?
I would say 100%. I don't, I think it's hard. I've talked to other veteran or not veterans, other family members who have lost a veteran. Um, and everyone's different. Like everyone's going to process things differently. Um, there's some veteran spouses that come into my lives on TikTok a lot. Um, there's some that have lost their like an immediate spouse or a family member or a son. There's another lady that comes in and she lost her son. Everybody's going to mourn differently because the love that you have for your spouse is different than the love that you have for a father or a son, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I was born into a family. I didn't choose my dad. I chose to love my dad, right? I grew up with him and it was kind of like this is not an option for you. This is your father and you're going to love him. Whereas when you have a spouse, you choose to give yourself to that person. So there's a two totally different kinds of loves and affection there. So when you lose people, especially in this type of situation, you're affected totally different. And I don't think people understand, it's not one size fits all when you're going through this. So I try to, I try to, in the best way I can, detach myself from my emotions when I'm doing my job, because my emotions, as you can see, just the fact I can look down and see a picture of my dad. It's been 8 years. Doesn't get any easier.
Mhm.
In fact, it seems like it's getting a lot harder. I recently went away to Georgia just by myself, took off for 5 days, because I can't. My mind is going a mile a minute, and I have to have closure. And I still, 8 years later, I don't think I've ever actually had closure with my dad. For me, that's how I was trained. I was trained like a Marine. I'm going to compartmentalize. I'm going to detach myself from the emotions. I'm going to get in there and obtain the objective and finish the goal and finish. There's nothing in the Marine Handbook about, hey, take a moment and breathe, reflect on what just happened. So I don't know how to do that. I know
Right.
how to fix it, which is the last command, fix it.
Right.
No, hey, Josh, breathe a little bit. So the way I deal with things is totally different than probably how most people would deal with it. I know I talk to these spouses and they struggle. They struggle differently, but and some that I've talked to, they're past it. And I'm like, I wish I could get past it. And I've often said it's not even about my dad anymore. It's about helping other veterans. But then somebody asks about my dad and I lose it. I break down because there's still not been that closure. So for me, it's very different. And even work in Mission Phoenix, I am so passionate about. I've got 6,500 hours myself in just research and development, just analyzing case studies, chest cams, whatever it took to get where I'm at. And I have a nonprofit of people that don't understand, and they never will understand. And I've been told countless times, your passion is not my passion. Your desire to fix this is not my desire. I would love to surround myself with people that have lost the way I've lost, because they will work 10 times harder than anybody else.
Hmm.
When you lose somebody, the and there's a thing called moral injury. Okay, moral injury is basically when you're put into a situation where you're either part of it or you're experiencing it, and it's not something a normal human being should go through. A lot of veterans will struggle through this with if they lose battle buddies on the field, if they, one veteran was telling me about having to pick up his battle buddy in different areas of the field and things that human beings shouldn't go through. And I'm trying obviously not to be very graphic on things, but that's a moral injury. When you experience something like that, it changes who you are. It changes your being, and you're never the same after that. And so for me to try to explain to somebody what it's like to be in my head is there's no way. There's no
Yeah.
way that people can understand it. And
Hmm.
it's I don't know, it's so difficult to even try to get somebody to work alongside you unless they've been through it. Because you can
Right.
tell them, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I want to do. This is my desire. Or even this, listen, I've developed a program that will change the number. We will cut the number in half. I guarantee it if we can get this out there. Nobody wants to do it because they don't have any vested interest in it.
Yeah.
It's like I've owned companies for years, and I've always said the best employees to hire are the ones that have a vested interest in the success of the company. If they're there for a job, they're never going to help you. If they're there for a career and to take over, then they'll help you. And there's no different in doing what we're doing. If
Yeah.
you don't find somebody to work alongside you that's there to fix the problem, you're not going to go anywhere.
I can 100% agree with that. I run clearly Heroes in the Sky,
Hmm.
and because of my personal, I have not lost anybody to this epidemic. I almost lost myself twice,
Yeah.
and I've I've put myself in harm's way and combat to achieve that mission as well, and no one didn't die over there either, and so yeah, it is difficult sometimes to find people to stand next to you to work as hard as you will, because my compassion and desire to honor these warriors and their families and tell your stories, I put a lot of hours into this because it's important to me. And if you don't, you're right. If you don't have that vested interest in it, then you're not going to get the same output. And so I do have a few on my team that are close to me that put in that will put in that time with me because they understand how passionate I am about it, and they're um, veterans too and retirees, and that's dealt with this. So I think I'm really glad you said that because people don't see how much work nonprofit
Hmm.
organizations are behind the scenes, what it takes to run one successfully. Yeah, people don't understand that sometimes. Like the personal time
Yeah.
you put into it is a lot. And it's sometimes it's a good portion. I put more time into the nonprofit, building connections, talking to families like yours, trying to understand this to make a better impact. You know, I put more time into that during the week than I do spending time with my family sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's tough. So, um, we're getting close to the end mark here, but I really wanted to highlight. So you mentioned Mission Phoenix earlier. So to our viewers, please tell us what Mission Phoenix is and what your goal is with this organization.
So Mission Phoenix obviously was developed through this tragedy. This is why we are here. 7 years ago, my father died by suicide by a cop. And the last words of "someone needs to fix it" is really the driving force behind what we're doing. We're a national nonprofit dedicated to fixing what's broken in our veterans living with active duty post traumatic stress. And we're not following a path. We're blazing this path forward with fire. I mean, we're dedicated to fixing the problem. And we've developed, and I'll tell you a couple of things that we did develop as an organization and that we are trying to implement now nationwide. And one of them is the Invictus Initiative. And you can go to invictusinitiative.com, and it kind of gives you a little overview, not extensively detailed because we're still developing things. And that's one thing that I've learned a long time ago is I'm not going to launch something unless I've tested it, unless I've tried it and make sure it's effective. We're not here to just throw stuff out there. We're here to fix problems. So um, you may have seen online veterans wearing a hat with this symbol on it. And this is the Invictus symbol. The Invictus symbol was developed about 5 years ago. It's now full swing. It's trademarked. It's out there. This is the official symbol for active duty post traumatic stress. And the reason why that we had to choose a symbol was because the situation with my father was a suicide by cop. I can go into hours upon hours on why everything was developed. But ultimately, if law enforcement knew they were dealing with a veteran with post-traumatic stress, they had the tools it needed, my father's life would have been saved. They didn't. So our goal is to implement those, develop them and implement them nationwide. So we developed the Code Phoenix program, which is an actual training program where we go in and we train law enforcement. Law enforcement now has the tools to know that when they see this decal on the back of a window, they now have a training program on what to do. And what the training program does is it trains law enforcement how to first identify it's a veteran, how to de-escalate a situation if they're in that euphoric state, if they're triggered and they're at a volatile point, how to de-escalate them from that situation, and how to get them back into a place where they can get help. Right now, I've personally trained over 500 law enforcement officers myself. We've got 13 case studies where law enforcement officers have said to me personally, this saved their life. I've been called out to situations with law enforcement. I do ride-alongs. I manage some 911 calls to try to train law enforcement in this area specifically so that I can test it. And now we know for sure this is going to save lives. The beautiful thing about the insignia or the Invictus symbol is that I mean, it's not an unattractive symbol. Veterans love it. It was chosen by veterans, not by me. This was developed, like I said, about 5 years ago. About 200 veterans got together, try because I told them, I said, if we, you've got, you've got autism. You get the autism puzzle symbol. Well, that autism puzzle symbol, if it's on the back of a window, Law enforcement knows, okay, don't go up and shine your flashlight in the back seat. Don't be abrupt. Don't agitate the child. They have a training program for it. So why don't we have that for veterans? If we're losing 1,080 or 1,000 plus veterans a year through suicide by cop, why is there not training for it? So then I started getting into law enforcement training and look at what their CIT training was, and then taking my research from post traumatic stress and implementing it in there. Now, here's the kicker: 2023, I get a call from a law enforcement officer saying, I've got somebody that needs to talk to a counselor. Do you have any counselors available? I said, no, I'm the only one available. Give him my number. Can't do that. Do you have anybody else? I said, no, I'm literally the only person that has any openings. Let him talk to me. He said, well, he's the officer that shot and killed your dad. And I thought, I've been trying to teach veterans how to reconcile, how to forgive, how to all this stuff. And I'm like, what do I do? So I met with him, and I can tell you now, fast forward, he is part of Mission Phoenix. He and I have sat down. The officer that killed my father has sat down side by side, developed training for law enforcement because he too is suffering now from what he had, his moral injury of having to put down a veteran. And he'll tell you they're okay if you got to put down a child molester or a drug dealer or something like that, and you're in that situation. There's not guilt there. But when you put down a national hero in a situation that could have been prevented, that is damaging to our law enforcement. So we have got to stand with our law enforcement as well because they're affected by it. So the whole program has been developed specifically to lower the number of veteran post-traumatic stress. We have our Valor Safe program that we go into organizations. We train their employees on how to deal with a veteran with post-traumatic stress in case one enters their location. And then we certify that location so that if a veteran is struggling, he now has a location he can go into, and he knows it's a safe place for him. And then we do a lot of community events and stuff like that too. But our main thing in our counseling, we do veteran counseling and provide resources and stuff like that. And we're still developing. And the other thing that we have too is our awareness hats, which we developed specifically because we have a huge amount of people that want to support veterans. And the first question I had when we developed this hat is, I want one of the hats. Well, by trademark law, unless you're a veteran, you cannot wear this symbol, the solo symbol. It's against the law for you to wear the symbol. And we did that specifically so law enforcement is not confused. They need to know who it is. And this is the only way to do it, is by putting strict rules and laws on it. Well, they want to support it. So we ended up developing the awareness symbol, which is obviously the 22. The 22 comes from our reverse the number, which one's backwards for that reason, because we have a whole reverse the number campaign. And this has been probably the biggest hit for civilians. They absolutely love it because they're now taking part in helping our veterans, and we don't make any money. Nobody gets paid for Mission Phoenix. Nobody's on salary, period. Everything goes right back into our program. And if you can imagine, the stuff that we develop is not cheap. It's not cheap at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
We just had a meeting with the Post Commission, which is the Peace Officer Service and Training Commission, about getting into the whole training of all law enforcement. We can't go through the VA because if we go through the VA, they're going to basically take over. If they need to make a change, it's going to take 2 years through bureaucracies to make a change, which lives will be lost during that 2 year period. It's the trademarking and everything. All the training programs are all trademarked, so no government entity will ever have control of it. It will be run by, ultimately, right now, Mission Phoenix has control, but it'll be run by a committee of just veterans. And then I'm going to step out of the whole thing. But until that happens, until we get it implemented, I'm going to keep fighting until we do it. So it's a big initiative. If the Post Commission accepts it and puts it through, if just Tennessee does it, it's going to cost us close to $80,000 to get it implemented. If the entire nation does, it's going to cost us close to $1 million. That's not something that we have. And that's why we're trying to get the word out there to everybody to say, listen, this is something worth fighting for. Our veterans are definitely worth fighting for, because it's not again, if you see a veteran wearing this hat, we've got lawn signs coming out, garden flags that just have the symbol on it. and letters for that veteran to give to their neighbors that say, hey, listen, this is what the symbol means. This is, and they have the opportunity to write in with it. This is what my triggers are, or this is what I've gone through. These are the things that I'm affected by. That way, their neighbors know. Now you've built a community of awareness. So 4th of July comes around, you're not setting off your fireworks in a cul-de-sac next to a Marine or somebody who's got triggers with it. Now you're going to them and saying, listen, we're planning on doing fireworks, next Saturday night. Do you want to take part in that? Well, no, I can't. Well, tell you what, we're going to get you some movie tickets and some dinner tickets. You go out, you have a great night that night, and while we're doing this. How that's building the community. And we've tested that here. I actually got called out to by law enforcement. They were at a point of putting down a veteran, could not get him under control. And he called me saying, we don't know what to do. We tried the training, we tried all this stuff. They give me the address. It was 4 miles from my house. I show up. It took about 45 minutes. We de-escalated him. I ended up tucking him in bed. But it was all because in that cul-de-sac, 20 feet outside his door, they were setting off fireworks and nobody told him. He was triggered so bad. He was ready. He called 911 himself saying that he was going to basically take the life of every person out there. Now, he wasn't, because that's not what they do, but that was his plea for help. And then law
Right.
enforcement showed up. Law enforcement gets in a situation where they don't know if they need to put him down because he has a firearm. But I literally trained these officers 2 weeks prior, thankfully, and they knew that they needed to do something. So, Mission Phoenix is not just a nonprofit that is looking for funds. We need funds, obviously, because there's no way we're going to get this out nationwide. We're doing it. We've been boots on the ground for 5 years. We've been for since 2022. We've been an actual nonprofit, but I've been doing research since the day my dad died, trying to figure out what happened. We know answers. We just found out. In fact, I've got a news. I'll be on the news this next week. They've called me up because UT, University of Tennessee, just developed something called biomarking, where they can take blood samples and biomark PTSD in a person. And not just that if they have it, but what do they have? What symptoms? What cause? What everything, which is groundbreaking. So I was called in as one of the few experts on post-traumatic stress on what does this mean? Technology is catching up with the problem. People are realizing that we've got to step up. And this is to me, this is groundbreaking because it's it's going to validate post-traumatic stress as a measurable condition, not just some hidden wound.
Hmm.
Right now, it's the hidden wounds. Well, now we can say no, we can actually see it. We
Yeah.
know it's there, and that's going to be groundbreaking because we're going to be able to our training, our certification programs that we have, because we have a lot of certification programs now, are going to change. Now it's going to be centralized to very specific post-traumatic stress, not just a blanket post-traumatic stress, because it's not, nobody's the same. But if we can identify, and we will eventually have one of these machines, these biomarker machines, I'll make sure we have one so that we can test veterans and we can help them specifically in their needs, not just say, okay, tell me what you go through. Now we can look it up and say, we know what you're going through. That's a huge jump. Technology is catching up and it's going to change. It's going to revolutionize the diagnosis. The We're going to be able to destigmatize what PTSD is and actually call it what it is.
Awesome. Definitely looking forward to that. Making some major groundwork and movements. You're really, like you said, you're blazing the trail, and so we definitely appreciate
Yeah,
that. And we're looking forward to hearing more how that goes. The other thing too is the veteran symbol, the Invictus symbol. If you send some down those our way, I'm a veteran. We'll definitely push that symbol out for you, and
absolutely.
we'll push those letters for you too. So
Yeah,
explaining to people what the symbol means, it'll be an honor for us to wear the hat and
yeah,
hand people those letters so they understand what goes into
yeah.
it.
Yep.
So,
Education is key to solving this.
right.
It really is. Medication's not going to help. Education of the communities,
Yep.
training our spouses and family members to be the first responders. Those are
Yep.
the key things that are going to change things.
Yeah.
We're here to fix it and we're going
Yep.
to fix it.
Absolutely. And
So
for those that don't know, if you want to get a hold of Mission Phoenix, you can go to their website, um, or you can go to,
missionphoenix.org.
there you
Yep.
go, or you can get a hold of Josh. But also, if you want to, we are a partner organization for Mission Phoenix, so you can go to heroesinthesky.org and you can click on our partner page and you can click on their link and you can go learn all about the Invictus symbol and the great work that Mission Phoenix is doing. So,
Yeah.
and we're
Awesome.
proud to stand alongside of you while you make these changes, and we see a good thing
Absolutely.
happening.
Well, we need
So,
organizations like yours to do that, honestly. I mean, we need more people to come
right.
alongside us. We're all in the same fight,
Yep.
so I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess what we're going to end with is, and this might tug some emotions, but we won't, we kind of want to feel the raw emotions. If you could send your dad a message right now or just talk to him one more time, what would you tell him?
I don't know why you just did that. um, First, I think, tell him I'm sorry for not spending more time, you know. But I tell him that we're fixing it. I tell him we're fighting for it. His whole life was about saving the lives of others. And now that he's gone, he's still saving the lives of others. So,
Well,
yeah.
Well, we apologize for the hard questions, but we won't.
Yeah, you didn't tell me you were going to do that. I always tell the newscasters, like, just don't ask anything about my father and we're fine, but they always do. But anyway, yeah, no, and I appreciate you. And we just need more people to get behind it, and not behind us, behind what's happening in the veteran community. Let's stop. Everybody's aware there's post-traumatic stress. Everybody's aware. Let's do something about it now. Stop talking about it. Do something about it.
Right. And I would, from our side, I would really like to see the numbers updated, because we're still using the 22 a day, and there's so many different studies that show that it's way higher than that.
Yeah.
And
well, I know the VA. I just did a research on the VA. The VA's only scanned 5 states that they chose, which is why they came up with 17. So think about that. They specifically, now the University of Michigan and the DoD did their own, and that's where the 44 came. And that doesn't include drug overdose, alcohol-related, suicide by cop. So
yeah,
we're looking at a lot of numbers.
absolutely.
So
Well, thank you. We've had a great interview with you today. If there's anything that you need from Heroes in the Sky, or we'll proudly stand behind you, and we're glad to watch this organization grow and do the things that you're doing.
I appreciate you. Appreciate you very much.
And thank you for your opening yourself up today. Sorry, we do apologize for some of the hard questions, but
No, it's good.
We ask those questions with genuine intent to create deterrence. So if people hear it, they can understand the severity of what we're dealing with, and maybe if people listen to your interview, maybe they'll think twice about doing this.
Yeah. Well, if they do, reach out to us. I mean, reach out to somebody. Even if you can't get a hold of us, reach out to somebody. Battle buddies are important. If I can leave you with one quote, it's our quote that has stuck with me, that actually came from my dad, ironically, by Ronald Reagan. And he said, somebody can't help everybody, but everybody can help somebody. And that'll change everything. If we all just help one person,